Canvas, but I'll just go to Seattle Central first and go to Canvas. And all right, so in the 226, one of the announcements is link to the presentation, which I'm going to use. Does it? Yeah, is it faster to download? So if it ever loads. Wonder what, that's because we're all doing it probably.
Oh.
Okay. I didn't. Will it ever load?
I know.
Yours did?
No.
No. Can you download it from the link? I thought this would be fair. You probably should have put it in files instead. So you guys can do this, but I think I am going to you guys can, I think, do this too if you want. The name of it was SQL Server Certification. PPTX. Now what should be, maybe it's Brinkster that's down.
Quick question.
Sure.
When we're creating our constraint on a foreign key,
Yeah.
we're referencing the primary key constraint?
Yes. You guys can't do this part, but if it works, I'm just going to so school. I did not know why it would be taking you guys so long. I thought I downloaded it to the desktop. There it is. At least I think I can do it now.
Oh, yeah.
If I have to, all right, I don't want to do all of this right now. All right, so if you guys can't get it from your thing, I will put it in files instead. I thought the link would work. It should work. All right, so this is, you wanted a thing on certification, so I thought I would go through this and try to organize it. The Microsoft sites are fairly clear, but there's 3 levels of certification available for SQL Server. There's the MTA, the Microsoft Technical Associate, the MCSA, Microsoft Certified Solutions, and MCSE, Microsoft Certified Solutions Expert. There are those levels of exams. The expert is the highest level. And there's an overview. I have a click here if you want to go for the overview of the certificates, but I'll go on. We'll look at them in detail in a moment. So the MTA exams focus on fundamentals. And these are, there are 3 tests: infrastructure, database, and networking. Database is, actually I think one of them is programming. I may have got that wrong. Let me go back. I'm just curious, the 3 for the MTA. Maybe this is the problem. Oh, there it goes. So if I look at the MTA and I click into that, I'll make this bigger moment. Infrastructure and developer. So I got that wrong when I put that in there. So instead of networking, infrastructure is networking. Developer is the other one. Database is the one that's relevant. The developer is for like C# programming. So it's in programming in general, and it's essentially, all of these are kind of basic concepts things. So they are, they basically just cover the basics. Employers probably don't, I mean, it'd be nice, I guess, in that it shows that you know the basics. The exam is actually 364. I put the numbers for them there. The MCSA is a little bit higher skill level, and there are 3 exams to get the MCSA. You can take any exam separately, but if you want the MCSA, you have to take all 3.
Wow.
So there's query in Microsoft SQL Server, which is basically, as you would think, SQL.
Mm-hmm.
The SQL that we cover covers a lot of that, but I would still, if you were going to take the test, I would study a little bit, because there's some things like pivot, and there's some things that we don't cover. There's some special things that they do. Administering, which kind of is like what this class has been, but with a little bit more, particularly on clusters and networking. But it's essentially like this.
Oh, like networking, like the network admin?
Yes. Well, actually, clustering for SQL Server.
Okay.
Administering SQL Server databases in the sense of not only installing and all the stuff that we've done, but also like, we'll talk a little bit about it, failover, where you have multiple SQL servers that are copying copies of each other.
So like maybe an app was sort of like a technical.
Yeah, the multiple servers that are working together, mirroring, failover, clustering. It's a little bit more complex than what we've done. Partially because we don't have the infrastructure to do that. But and then implementing a data warehouse, which is what we're starting to do in the other class. Okay. So I would study for all 3 of them, because we've covered, we've covered some of the aspects, but not everything related. So there are those 3 exams. And then the MCSE has 2 paths. You can get it either by following the data platform or business intelligence. So there's two different sets of tests depending on which one you want to do. You could do both, of course, but you know, at $150 a test, you can get one. So this is developing Microsoft SQL Server databases and developing solutions for SQL Server. That's the development or the data platform. And then in the business, there's implementing data models and reports and designing business intelligence solutions. We haven't done, well, we're doing a tiny bit of it. That's sort of what we're doing in the morning class, but it's a lot more in depth.
So you think we are better?
We're probably better prepared for the first two. You could learn the others, but all of these things, you know, have lots of things. Now, what I did is I made links to what they entail, and I'll go through some of that. So let's make this bigger. No, I do not want to chat with you, Microsoft. No, thanks. All right, so let's make this bigger. This is just Control Plus, right? Is it Shift Plus for the browser alone?
It's Shift Control Plus.
Shift Control Plus? Or just Shift Plus? I'm just trying to make the browser bigger.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, it's Control minus and plus. Resume.
Okay. Is that big enough?
You did change the phone.
What? Oh, wow. It isn't showing the... How do I get it to show the... Does anybody know how to get the PowerPoint to show? To show what's not on the PowerPoint, like when I do the link?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I could kill the PowerPoint, but I guess I could.
Yeah, it's one of these guys. And then
It might be one of the things down here.
well, I clicked on something and that's going out.
But
It's not. Oh, you're talking about showing up here.
Yes, on the screen.
Isn't that one of the like the problem of the thing?
I don't know.
There is two. Yeah, I think it's something that other instructors have run into.
All right, so let me look at something here. By hide presenter view, nope.
I think you have to drag something like there's two.
Maybe. I may have to kill the PowerPoint. Oh, well, let's just do quick escape, slideshow. Now if I go to the, still not going.
It's hiding. You have to drag something.
I minimized it. I haven't used PowerPoint in a long time, as you can probably tell. Now I have no mouse. There it is. Trying to get to the charms. devices, project. Nothing. Okay. If all else fails, I will totally kill the PowerPoint. Okay, that's awfully huge. Let's see if I can do. How's that? Okay. So notice that this is $115, the MTA, which is less than the other exams. We are trying to get the tests here with discounts for students. Don't know if you want to do them. As I said, this one is good for like students, but it's not necessarily good for jobs. So what I'm doing, this is under, all of these tests have what they cover, what skills. So skills measured. And that is hard to read, isn't it? Okay, so core database concepts, and they say that that's worth 20 to 25% of the grade. And it has things like understand what a table is and how it relates to data that will be stored in the database, columns, fields, rows, records. That's pretty simple. Understand what a relational database is, the need for relational database management systems, and how relations are established. So that would probably include like normalization. As well as what a SQL Server is and how a management system works. Understand what DML is, and that's DML is basically the data modeling language. I'm trying to think of what the DML, data manipulation language, which is basically selects. Selects and views and things like that. DDL is about creating objects, creating stored procedures, creating tables, creating database objects. They're both SQL. One is just retrieving data and the other is creating the objects that store and manipulate data. And then designing tables, these are some preparation stuff. They talk about creating database objects, data types, understanding data types, understand tables and how to create them, create views, create stored procedures and functions. And, select data, insert data, update data, and delete data. Understand normalization, primary, foreign, and composite keys, understand indexes. And under administer a database, understand database security concepts, backups and restore. And then there's some preparation options. And this is, who should take this? Candidates for this exam are seeking to prove introductory knowledge. So this test, as I said, it shows that you took a course in database. It's basically what it shows.
Everyone I yeah.
What?
Basically, everyone I talked to is not useful.
Yeah. Now, the very last slide, if I get back to that, I kind of mixed those that said it was useful and those that said it was not useful. And the tendency is it won't get you a job in database. The certs. Some of them said they're getting better. The certifications are getting better so that employers are giving them more of a look than they used to. By better, they mean harder and less susceptible to what they call brain dumps. A lot of people, you can get paid for doing the exam and coming out and just telling everything you can remember about the exam. I'm going to go back. So I just wanted to go to the next. Well, do I want to go to the next slide? I wanted to go to the next exam. Is home right? No. SQL Server. All right, so the MCSA, as I said, it has 3 exams actually. So 461, 462, and 463. And again, the querying, the administering, and the implementing. And I'm not sure I'll go through all of the things, but we could look at when they have, if I pick a particular exam, then you could go there and it'll talk about the skills measured. Creating database objects, working with data, modifying data, troubleshoot and optimize. And if you want to go into the details, optimize queries, manage transactions, evaluate the use of row-based operations versus set-based operations, and implement error handling. This test is mostly on SQL. Notice it's $150. And what is not in the United States? Oh, if you're not in the United States, where do you take it? Okay. So, I mean, you might look at this, but this first exam is mostly SQL. The second exam, I mean, just for broad topics, install and configure. We did maintain instances of the database. No, I do not want to do your survey. Optimize and troubleshoot, manage data, implement security, and implement high availability. We've touched on all of those except maybe high availability, which I'll talk about. That's more the failover, keeping it up 24 hours a day.
So that always on thing?
Yeah. And we didn't do that because when I looked at it, we don't have a setup to do it. But we could talk about it. Yeah, well, you need a cluster. You need specifically a cluster. We're going to do log shipping, which requires another server also, but it doesn't have to be clustered. Does that make sense? So all of these things have classes you can take and books that are all very expensive. The classes tend to run about $2,500 a piece. The books are not horrible, but they're about 120 or so a bit. You can, a lot of them you can find PDFs, a lot of it for free, even though those aren't the legal copies. Yeah, they can. I mean, it basically, Microsoft wants to believe they're in demand.
Yeah, well, they are for real in demand when you get into enterprise, for sure. If you want to actually go.
So part of why they, so the data warehouse, design and implement a data warehouse. That's what we did with the DW, except that they would probably get more detailed into that. Extract and transform is basically the SSIS that we've been doing. And the load data is also that. Configure and deploy SSIS solutions, and then build data quality solutions. All of those things we're kind of doing in the other class, which you're not in, but yeah. But we're only doing it at a very low level. We're not doing all. We could spend quarters working on all the depth of that.
Do they get into ETL at all?
A little bit.
Well, that's usually you need another tool for that.
Yeah.
Like Informatica or something like that. Cleans data.
The SSIS does some of that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it has the tools for doing some of that.
Uh-huh.
The SSIS, the SQL Server Integration Services.
Oh, okay.
So I went too far back. And then the MCSE, which is actually, I don't want the business intelligence one so much. Now, to get the MCSE, so I went too far back again. You have to do all the MCSA tests too.
So you have to take the workforce one of the.
You have to do, basically you have to do all of these. It's 5 exams
Wow.
at $150 each.
Oh, wow, jeez, wow.
Not worth it.
So what type of job you get and how much you pay?
Well, the thing is that the database, they're not, most of them don't look at the certificates. They do in networking fields, they require these certificates.
Oh, wow.
In database, it's much less likely to be required. In fact, it's rare.
So what are we going to do then to separate ourselves from the other people that are trying to get a database job? Give us a what? Volunteer?
So internships are really good. There are some introductory jobs that are fairly common.
What is it called?
That's a good question because they're called all over the map.
Sometimes they're
Maybe
called
you guys will have
data
some of them.
analysts, some of them are business analysts.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of times what they do is they're running queries against the database. It is possible sometimes, depending on the company, to get involved in developing.
You really have to read the description.
Yeah, but the titles are almost meaningless. I would look for skills, like when you do the job searches, look for skills. If you know SQL, just knowing SQL has gotten people jobs because a lot of people don't know it, and it's critical for talking to databases. I was just looking at some NoSQL. I don't want to step on people's stuff that are doing NoSQL, but I was looking at the Apache. There's a name for it. It's the one that was developed by Facebook to handle their data needs. They claim it's NoSQL, but in the samples that they do, it's all SQL to create things. And yeah.
Yeah, like the job that I interviewed for, the one that I wasn't passionate about. I mean, it involved other things. You know, it was a warehouse management system, but one of the things was they asked me about was, you know, when you would do certain sort of joins. That was in their job description.
Well, they do. I mean, at least in the Apache thing that I looked at, everything to create a database, or all the initial queries and stuff were just SQL. It's called a NoSQL database, but it had lots of SQL queries.
NoSQL uses SQL.
Yeah, which is an odd thing, sort of.
It's in the structure of the database.
There are differences in how they define tables, and there are differences in how they process relations to some extent.
Yeah.
But they still use a lot of SQL. Yeah, testing things. You know, the thing is, you're probably not going to get a job as a database administrator unless it's a startup and you just know the people. So this is for the costs. So the MTA is $115, the others are $150. If you were to take all of the exams to get an MCSA, it would be at least $1,165. That's just for the exams, but that doesn't include the cost of study materials or the courses.
Oh, you could take this whole program and
Right.
Yeah, yeah, probably. I mean, it's so the courses. I've done these courses before. They're typically if you're doing it with a lot of them are online, but you still have to pay for them. If you're doing it live, it usually is like a 40-hour class, so 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and about $2,500. And they just go through and show you everything. It's really, really hard to absorb that much stuff in 40 hours.
it's like the SAT. It's either you know or if you don't, so there's no reason showing up money.
Yeah. One of the things that I didn't show you is most of these exams are the target audience, now the MTA is just for somebody who wanted to show. The target audience is somebody that's worked in the business for a year or more, or several years. We could go back and look at that if you want.
I just don't understand it. I don't understand. There's gotta be something, there's some value to these certifications. I mean, we talked about, okay, so if someone has already got experience in the field, and then they wanna go back and take the certification, I mean, there's gotta be something.
Well,
Vendors and Microsoft themselves will pay.
right now, if you wanted a job at Microsoft,
Like my sister's getting paid right now to take the Azure certification, Microsoft Azure certification test to become a subject matter expert.
Well, I'm thinking that when we talk about the uselessness of the certification, we are really talking about a certification.
yes,
And not necessarily other Microsoft products.
that's true.
So, you know, I'm trying to see where there is some kind of moral value. You know, it's set up so either way you slice it, it's like, you know, it seems like there's something in the certification.
Well, basically, I think what it is that it's really the field, like networking certs are a must. Database
Yeah.
certs, not so much.
Yeah.
There are some, but
What we're talking about though, the database certification.
Right,
especially the NCSE, which is the most expensive.
Right, and programming certifications aren't worth much either.
it's just that, it's
Yes,
just.
but, okay, so we're sticking in the database box.
Right.
Just the database certification. The NCSE is the highest certification you get, it's the most expensive, they want you to have experience. And if you have to take 5 tests, it's like you're jumping through all these hoops, you know, and especially with experience, but there's something in there, you know?
Well,
Well, no, it would be interesting to see how many people actually would take it. Sometimes companies have these things. Right.
What industries.
so like this
This
is one of the reviews
Or
of
how many
a
people
developer.
actually even take it, or
He
if
he
it's
said he
something-
took the test because his employer gave him a bonus for taking them.
I mean, like Oracle DBA, I've seen.
Meaning you already have
that.
Yeah.
Certification.
One of the things you could look at, like Oracle, there's some other certifications that are worth more money, you know, as you do that. You had something to add?
Just the certificates and so Ed Messerly, right, in his Net 120 class always will mention how some job he was working at, he was getting paid more than the owner because the company paid per cert and he just happened to have 15 certs that they paid $25.
Right, but again, that's in networking.
Just networking, yeah.
Right, but I mean, the conversation is a certificate worth it? And just to reiterate what you said last, is if somebody's going to pay you for it.
Well, right, but no, the point is, it really depends on the area you're in. Networking certs, you may get paid more. Programming certs don't really matter that much. Database certs really don't matter that much. Maybe you happen to work for a company that puts value in it.
If you
But
want to
that
work
could be
for
a point
Microsoft,
where
the certs have a lot of value if you want to work for Microsoft. Because as Microsoft often says when you talk to them, they have to eat their own poison. Like they were running Windows 10 when it was alpha in the office. You know, they run the most current software. They basically have to, you know, if they want the certs to be valuable, they have to treat them as if they're valuable. So at Microsoft, the certs are very valuable. Other places it depends. Like this guy says, and this is the thing. It says recently had a change of heart regarding the worth of these certifications. I still am not silly enough to believe that getting an MCDBA certificate proves you're an expert or even that you know much about SQL Server. But I do think that knowing the MCDBA exam material generally demonstrates a reasonable level of SQL Server knowledge. And then he says, can you tell the difference between those two statements? Passing the test proves nothing. Knowing the material in the test is quite valuable. It says, unfortunately, it's much too easy to pass the test without knowing the material.
Yeah, my sister's starting to notice that the majority of Microsoft cert tests are just a matter of rote memorization.
Yeah,
And you could, no matter what.
rote memorization. Because they want,
You can pass it, but not know anything.
see, they want them to be multiple choice because they want to be able to just grade them on the computer. They don't want any humans to have to grade them.
That's a problem.
And so with multiple choice, now they do in the SQL Server exams, one of the things they've done is they've started doing scenarios. So you read the scenario, and then you pick out the best answer. All of the answers may be correct, but one is best. The trouble with that is you still can memorize it, and really what they're testing is your reading comprehension. You know, as you go through, and because you have to read the scenario really carefully. I had a couple of others, so let's go back if I can to the PowerPoint slide. That was one person, you know, just said that knowing the information on that is valuable, but passing the test doesn't do that. And then there's a constant debate in the SQL Server community about whether their certifications are worthwhile. And most of them say that they were a waste of time and money. It's a rant against those, basically because there's so many test dumps. For most of the certifications, you've been able to attend a 3 to 5 day boot camp that crams enough knowledge down your throat to pass the exam by the end of the week. You can buy a book that gives you all the knowledge you need to pass the exam. You can buy a brain dump from somebody who's memorized the exam. And you can pay somebody else to take the exam on your behalf.
What? Listen, what you're talking about is our standardized test. I mean, I can look at that and then say the same about it.
Right, but so
You know? Like,
the thing is, generally, companies, a database is core to a company's livelihood. So they generally value experience above education.
right.
So what you have to do, and it's really hard, is get experience. So you have to come in and work at a, not as an administrator, but work with people on teams that are working on databases, internships, you know, the more you can do. And there is opportunity to create databases. Mostly they're in web development, right? So when you're building, because typically the MySQL, PHP world, the person that creates the web page also creates the database and creates, that actually counts as database experience when you're building databases. Also small companies where you go in and they can't afford a DBA because a DBA can make 100-something thousand a year, right? They can't afford that, so they might take somebody with lesser experience but has the education and work with them and, you know, build their databases. So small companies, and again, that's experience. Or on a big companies don't just have a database administrator, they have database teams. And so you can get hired in on some of those at a lower level. Also, if you have any expertise in an area, I've had a woman in here who had quite a bit of medical expertise, and she went over to, I think it was Harborview, and she built them a database, and the database was on, they were tracking workman's comp claims within the hospital, but they had to deal, I mean, it was a fairly complicated database, in fact, because there are lots of different ways you can claim workman's comp. There are lots of different kinds of injuries. There's all sorts of different government codes that go along with that. And then you have to, what they were trying to track too is when they came into the system, when they went out, what the results were, you know, whether they came back after that and things. It was basically a lot of insurance information for the hospital, you know, in terms of the claims. It helps if you have an area of knowledge like that. I also had a student long ago, weirdly, that made quite a bit of money doing databases for paint companies because mixing paint is each company has their own formulas and it's proprietary, right? So, and they tend to refer to these things by bizarre chemical formulas. So a database that would allow within a company to look up the formulas and actually figure out what paint goes with them and how to mix it. And he knew that because he'd worked at a paint company for a long time. That kind of, you know, you can pick up that kind of knowledge to build a database, but it really helps if you have an in something, if you've worked with something. Yeah. So if you have the business knowledge, if you've worked in restaurants and things, databases, again, you might be able to build something that would help track, the specific.
Things with the.
There are things that can be bought off the shelf for some businesses, but the thing with the certifications, they might be worth it to learn all the stuff that's there. As I said, the knowledge that goes with it is worth a lot, but just passing the test doesn't prove you have the knowledge. It proves that you could memorize something for a day or two. And again, companies that can afford it will go for experience first. I think these are like discussion groups. I'm just looking to see if there was parts, because I remember there was reasons, so I think. This one, in my humble opinion, software development certifications are only useful as toilet paper. If your company is or wants to be a Microsoft certified partner, then employees taking exams looks good for them. And that's actually, so again, Microsoft has money invested in these exams. And companies that want to, there actually is a logo that you can get, we are a Microsoft partner. And if you're a Microsoft partner, then you would want your employees to have these exams.
Are those like contractors that hire to implement Microsoft?
So if you're a Microsoft partner, it means that you basically it means you have certified people that can deploy Microsoft products.
Yeah.
My sister works for Alma, and they are a vendor, a very large consulting company internationally that is a vendor for Microsoft. And so they are required within their first 2 years to be certified in something.
Wow. So would you say that you typically have done, that's what you would
Maybe international, that's the same thing.
No.
Yeah, and there's, as you said, the Oracle certifications. If you're working with Oracle, they're partners with that. There are Google partnerships.
Through a company other than Microsoft that worked at Microsoft.
One of the things about the exams, though, is if you can get into a company,
Yes.
if you can get into a company that's a Microsoft, they usually will pay you to get the exams.
Yeah.
Which is a much better way to do it than paying yourself. Yeah, no.
So this is a thought exercise. This is like, okay, go over there and see how well you can do with that certification as far as knowledge. Look through what they're asking for, and over time, try to learn.
And honestly, I haven't done these certifications because nobody's paid me to do it. I would do them if they paid me. Partially because, I actually do like, I had it before, those big blue books. Those are the certification exam books that tell, they are really good books for just learning the basics of, the server. And things.
Drop those in.
I have a couple. Do you want me to go get a couple to show you?
No, I think I took a picture of it.
Yeah, and there are, they have exams, because Microsoft, again, makes money on these in multiple ways. They have the certificate itself where they have centers, they outsource it to give the tests. The center gets a certain amount of money and a certain amount goes back to Microsoft. But Microsoft also has all the book materials, and it has online courses that you can pay for, or you can go to in-person courses, and they get money from all of that. Yes.
Yes, it's a racket.
So, when you're thinking of exams, what I would do before I do the exam, you might do them for knowledge. They're useful for that. They might give you an edge over somebody with equal experience. You have the certificate and they don't, you would probably look better. The other thing is look at who you want to work for and see if they value the certificates or not. But at least in database, experience will trump the certificate every time, and the hard thing is to get that experience. I would like, so, if you ever get out there and make big money or something, I would really love to set up some partnerships where we could guarantee internships, which we don't really have right now. Yes, it would be nice.
I talked to Karen this morning and she said she have nothing about database.
Database internships are hard to come by. I will look. There are a couple places. They're hard to come by because not only do people not want inexperienced people working on their database, they almost always have proprietary information, and oftentimes you have to sign a statement of non-disclosure when you're working on these things.
That's pretty standard for most companies, though. They have any kind of proprietary
Yeah.
information at all. You have to sign it.
It's one of the problems with getting a really good database to use is that it's almost always proprietary information. Either that or it's totally unstructured. Yeah.
I think you're thinking of Cassandra.
Yes, I think.
It's a column-oriented tabular model.
Right, and it's done by Facebook, developed it for themselves, right? And they're distributing it.
I don't see that here, that they were without what
Maybe it's, let's see, www. Actually, what I searched for that was
they used it to power their inbox. Google had a
is that where I went? This isn't the one. I had a list that had a whole bunch of them. Well, my Facebook started out on MySQL and PHP, but in the last few years they have changed. They wrote their own programming language and they wrote their own database structure. So. Yeah, I don't know why entirely. Oh, Apple just produced Swift, which is a new programming language. It's meant to replace their Object-C, which is a horrible language. But that's if you want to write for Apple phones and iPads. It was always in Objective-C. Now it can be in Swift, which is, I think, basically just a wrapper for Objective-C to make it a little less ugly. So any other questions on the certifications? I mean, the general consensus that I found is that the knowledge is worthwhile, but passing the test proves nothing. I think that's probably true in the networking world too, but for some reason they value the tests more.
Well, in your network, I mean, it's very vital if you somebody screws that up.
Well, yeah, well, database too is pretty vital.
Probably just has to do with the way the test.
It could be.
If it's known that the way that you test in the database is not very indicative of your knowledge, as opposed to the way that you test in networking is very indicative of your knowledge.
And I think that those guys do it like all online. And there's no purpose.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe that's the way. Maybe that's what networking knowledge is.
They're not. You did everything in the networking.
Yeah, I know.
It's hard. It's all true. It's about. You talked about setting up
Right,
server for the fail.
Can you test that
That
with
is
multiple choice?
networking. That's networking.
Right, but can you test that with multiple choice?
You can test anything with that.
You can.
Accurately.
You can say that you can test database knowledge accurately because you know the terms. It's the same thing. And networking, you know the terms. It's a standardized test.
Although with real networking, a lot of it is involved in, do you know where to crawl under the table to get this plug-in? You know, do you understand the cabling? Do you understand the switches? Switches are programmable, so there's a lot of...
They do a lot of stuff in PowerShell too, when setting up servers.
Right, because that's the programmable part when you're looking at the switches and the routers.
So, right. But you can, so a lot of that is, there's a lot of similarities, you know, it's all one, I mean, you can set up an entire server network. And you can be a shop for you. I don't know.
I'm not, my ignorance of networking is fairly large. Oh, you know what, I'm still running this, I think.